The next speaker that we have is somebody that I'm learning a lot from just based on his books and the interaction that I've come to have with him of late. And I think as part of building the business that we have, which is a very young business, there's a lot of abstract concepts that we need to internalize. The author, I know he hates to be being called a professor, but he is also a professor at NYU, and also a great expert in history and life and statistics and math. You'll actually be fascinated hearing him talking about his two books. He's going to talk about antifragility, which is a concept that is very contrarian. And I think from listening to his lecture today and then going and reading his book, you probably will learn a lot about what it means to absorb shocks in life. So without further ado, Nicholas Taleb. Thank you so much.
It's actually reciprocal because I picked his brains as well. So it worked both ways. Thank you, I'm honored to be here. And I'm going to talk about the concept of antifragility and my book, Antifragile, which I saw outside in large quantities, signed. So, and actually, yeah, signed, my wrist, 800 copies, my wrist is still sore. Okay, so I'm known as the author of a book I don't like that much, The Black Swan, about random events, why we can't predict random events, why we can't see things coming, and people have been focused too much on, by the way, there's no count. Oh yeah, there's a count. They've been focusing too much on trying to predict black swan events, when in fact what matters is not predicting black swan events, is getting out of the way. I guess for those of you who live in the United States, you know about Thanksgiving, okay? It's never a good idea to be a turkey for Thanksgiving, as we all know. But the event that happens 2 days before Thanksgiving is going to be a random event for the turkey. Will it be a random event for the butcher? No. So the whole idea is not to be a turkey. That's it. Okay? So the whole idea is to be prepared to have a system, not to have to worry about black swans, not to have to predict the environment, but be set up in a way to benefit from the unpredictability of the environment. And a lot of companies have this attribute, and a lot of systems have this attribute. So, a little bit of background. By profession now, I'm an applied mathematician, doing the boring stuff people do when they're applied, professors traveling to conferences, getting, drunk with other mathematicians, stuff like that. But before that, for 21 years, I was an option trader. And I picked up everything I know from option trading. And when you're an option trader, you don't know a lot of things. Honestly, your knowledge is very limited. You don't read the papers because it's useless. You discover quickly it's useless. You know one thing, professionally, volatility. And you know one thing outside of that is alcohol. So when I stopped trading, I wanted to have a specialty. I could not specialize in alcohol because I wasn't good, at it too much. Like my friends could drink a lot more than I did. So I focused on volatility, trying to model volatility mathematically. Plus, I'm not good at bridge. My retired traders friends become bridge players and tennis players. I'm neither good at bridge nor at tennis. So I started trying to develop models of volatility. And it hit me that in the process, accidentally, that everything, all right, can be seen as how things respond to volatility. Everything. So the fragile, for example, like this coffee cup, made in China, but real, the highest quality, does not like volatility. Everything fragile has this in common, this commonality. In the process of understanding fragility, we option traders had a term for things that like volatility. We called it, long gamma. And it was not in the literature, it was not in the vocabulary. Because when you ask people what's the opposite of fragile, they tell you solid, robust, someone from New York or Brooklyn, all right? They don't give you the characterization I'm looking for. Because the opposite of a package on which is written, please handle with care, it should be written, please mishandle. Okay? That's the exact opposite. You see? The opposite of fragile is not solid, it's not robust, it's not, I hate that term, resilient. It is something that likes disorder and volatility. The Greeks had a concept of it. You know about the fragile. You're sitting down with a sword above your head, waiting for the sword to fall, and you can do absolutely nothing about it. Like the coffee cup. One day it was going to break. You can't do anything about it. Fragile companies, fragile bridges, one day will collapse. You can't do anything about it, okay? That's a fragile, okay? Cannot handle a certain amount of disorder or unpredictability. In the middle, the resilient, like Phoenix. You shoot it, it comes back. Shoot it, doesn't degrade, doesn't improve, like people from New York, again, okay? And to the right, you have Hydra. You cut one head, guess what? Two grow back. So really, it feeds on attempt to harm it, okay? So there are a lot of Hydra-like things in life. And let's look at things, how they react to volatility to see the Hydra attribute. The fragile is like a bank. They make money, they make money, they make money, they make money. And then one day, you got a phone call, all right? They didn't make money. When they lose a lot. They lose more than they ever made before. Hedge funds, a lot of them have this attribute, okay? Companies, after they become mature, have this attribute. They make steady income, and then one day you get a phone call, right? This is the fragile. And it doesn't like volatility. All the big variations are downside. The robust, as I said, people from Brooklyn, okay? No upside, but no downside, all right? And then I have actually a character, Fat Tony from Brooklyn, and Antifragile. And then you'll see exactly what I mean once you read about Fat Tony, okay? And then the Antifragile, most of the big shocks are to the upside, okay? Think of a venture capital P&L, okay? Long volatility, long optionality, right? So this is how it looks in time series space. And let's look at it in a different dimension. It's a little complicated to explain, but I've written about 200 technical pages on it. I still try, I'm trying to figure it out exactly. And Dheeraj had a conversation, I tell you it takes a lifetime for that. Is that if you like one of these, you like them all. And if you hate one of these, you hate them all, okay? And this makes it easy. If you like time, you like volatility. If you don't like volatility, you don't like time. Time brings volatility. But what they all have in common is that they have more upside than downside when they're anti-fragile, and the anti-fragile likes them all, up to a point, of course. And you have more downside than upside when you're fragile. And my body is fragile. It has one attribute. It doesn't like earthquakes, okay? It doesn't like time. It doesn't become more accidents. So this is, what I call the disorder brother. It's not a moving company. It's a characterization. And with this, we can do quite a bit. And I learned it from being an option trader. If you don't like volatility, the market goes down 1%, okay, you lose $1 million. The market goes down 5%, you lose 20 million, not 5. You have an accelerated negative P&L. And this is how we can measure, more downside than upside. This is how we can measure this asymmetry. This is how we can measure, really, the degree of fragility in a system. Now, as we say in America, when life gives you a lemon, you make lemonade. So you have two approaches in life. If you read too much of The Economist, The New York Times, all these are junk, all right, you have the idea that volatility is bad. But in fact, if you have the idea, hey, we're going to have high winds, what do you do? That necessarily have to go duck in your basement, okay? With spam, some movies, candles, maybe guns. No, if you hear you're going to have high winds, let's try to make some money out of it, okay? So, hence, you can have windmills, build windmills, try to make money out of turmoil. My profession, incidentally, for 21 years, was trying to benefit from turmoil. Okay? I mean, it's maybe not a very interesting profession, but you can translate it into real terms. Let's be set up in a way to benefit from disorder, or bad events, from the, attempts by life to give you lemons. So, but you say, how? Look at your bone. You have all bones. Your bones improve if you shock them. And actually, not only that, but if you don't stress your bones, guess what happened? You lose in bone density. Actually, people who go to gyms don't stress their bones, and they lose in bone density. The old-fashioned way of carrying water jugs on your head is still the best if you want to have a good bone structure, and actually even regulates the hormonal structure, even fertility. So it's not just, business life, it's your bone, it's your body. There's a gym here, I think. Okay, now let's look at the mechanism of overcompensation. A lot of things not only benefit from bad events, but need bad events because they overcompensate by shooting higher. Just like your bone gets stronger, up to a point, of course. If I put 500 pounds on my shoulder, it'd be okay. My bones will get stronger. 5,000 pounds, you need another speaker, all right? Okay, all right, so you know what happens. It's the same thing with, and now I looked at history and discovered one thing. I know a little bit of the Eastern Mediterranean seaboard, and then you look at the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians had zero resources. They were the wealthiest people in the Mediterranean for 1,000 years. For 1,000 years, okay? They had absolutely zero, nothing to speak of. It so happened that after the Bronze Age, the island of Cyprus nearby had copper. They had no copper, they had no resources. So someone with his cousins went to get some copper. Guess what? When you go get copper from Cyprus, you need to build boats, no? You learn to navigate. You learn to go to Cyprus. So they got a little more copper. And in no time, they became a maritime network of buying copper from Cyprus, buying other things from the Cypriots, buying other things from other people. And then, of course, they became the wealthiest nation on zero resources, nothing. They had absolutely nothing. The Venetians, same story. The modern equivalent is Singapore. These guys have nothing. Look in reverse, Saudi Arabia, exact opposite. They have everything. And guess what? They're going nowhere. With all of that, they're going nowhere. So here you see that overcompensation is a mechanism by which economies also work. You see, stressors are good, and here's your industry. Post and pre.com of 2000. Aha. Before 2000, everything was bad compared to what it is today. Everything improved today from that event. So really, we humans have a mechanism by which we overcompensate. And we can only act by overcompensating, actually. Your bones are not going to get strong on their own. So with this, we realize that companies not only like volatility, but they need it. They need certain dose. Not too much, not too little. Which brings me to the concept of optionality. Again, I started with telling you my secret. I was an option trader. When I go to literary festivals, I don't tell them because they're associated with finance. For them, finance is a bad thing. People use, to rip off people. No. It's interesting for me mathematically. And also as a way of viewing things in life. The attribute of an option, more upside than downside. You pay little, you get a lot. And actually, sometimes you pay nothing. Okay? And an option likes volatility. Why? Because I'd rather have a volatile environment will have a lot more upside and a lot more downside. I'm not exposed to the downside, I get more upside. You see? And it's what we say called convex. So under uncertainty, you have less to lose, so you benefit from the positive side of uncertainty, not the negative side. The only problem is you got to pay for it. Sometimes you don't have to pay for it. So I look at the world with positive and negative optionality. Positive optionality have more upside than downside. The other one, you have more downside than upside. You have a curve like this. The best way to view it is this way, okay? You see? So accelerated profits, let's look at it this way in this dimension. This translates to this. If an event happens, GDP is down 1%, I lose $1 million. Okay, GDP is up 1%, I make 3 million. I am anti-fragile. That's a simple rule. If the reverse, I am fragile. Okay? Simple. Okay? So that is asymmetry explained here. If the market goes down 10%, I lose 10 million. The market is up 10%, I make 100 million. I am anti-fragile. Conversely, if the market goes down 10%, I lose 10 million. The market goes down another 10%, I lose 1 million. I'm also anti-fragile. You see? Non-linearity, shared by everything. The fragile has this non-linearity. My body, if I fall 10 meters, I'm harmed more than 10 times if I fell 1 meter. I am fragile, okay? And you can measure fragility that way. Now, optionality means that you have the choice, you have the option, okay? No obligation, which means that you see different things in the environment you can flip. And sure enough, you've heard of Nokia, but had I asked you that question 15 years ago, you'd have said, oh, it's some small company that makes what? Boots for, because they have a very bad spring in Finland. I don't know if you've been in Finland in the spring. Don't, okay? It's all mud, right? So that was their business. And then they switched to making, what is commonly known as the cell phones, the kind of thing that grandmothers have, and this, my mother uses because she doesn't want an iPhone. All right. But they didn't catch on the second optionality, but good enough. They made enough money. Another company, Tiffany, I don't know if you know Tiffany in America. It's a big company that makes luxury, that sells luxury stuff. Mostly, if you or some of your friends or your daughter getting married, you have a list there. But it all started with the following. The fellow was selling stationery. And people were showing up and saying, hey, my daughter is getting married. I want this Dr. and Mrs. Smith have their whatever. Okay, so what, you make $20? Thought about it, said, does your daughter like diamonds? Say, yeah. Okay, no, we have some. And it all started that way. Use the existing business line you have to introduce others. It's very hard. People don't realize how hard it is to switch business. Because you have a business plan. Once you have a business plan, you're married to that business plan. You're ashamed of changing course. People searching, Columbus was going to India. He discovered the Americas. They still were in denial, right? That's not what they're looking for. People are ashamed. The boss say, hey, that's not what we're in for. You want to see the story? Boeing, origin, lumber company. They don't say it. But if you investigate, you realize the family was a lumber making company getting a lot of orders for airplanes. And the son liked to fly. And sure enough, said there's more money in these flying things than lumber. And sure enough, they abandoned lumber because there's no more lumber in Boeing, okay? So there are businesses that are error-loving. A business that's error-loving is a business that has optionality, particularly with its own mistakes. I don't know if you've heard of that business. I'm sure you've never heard of it, of something called Viagra, no? Okay, so Viagra was it was not like the intention in a business plan to improve the lives of 72-year-old men. That was not the idea. It was what was Viagra? Blood pressure medicine, but they made a mistake. They mispredicted. It had a side effect. Out of the 100,000 drugs we have in the market today, all right, there are fewer than 200 that are there for what they were made for. The rest are there for the side effects. The aspirin you use today as a blood thinner, it's a side effect of its previous use as a fever reducer. of a painkiller, which was a side effect of fever reducer, right? So, the philosophical stone is, there are some businesses that gain from randomness. We know exactly what shape they have. It's not randomness, it's not luck. It's they have optionality, where you can benefit from luck or not, you see? So what I call the philosopher's stones. So we have this illusion that things grow with education, top-down technology. No, education is not, we have this illusion that mathematics leads to science, leads to technology, leads to business. It's rather the opposite. You see, tinkering, trial and error, you make small error, you have upside, is how things work. So if we set up an experiment, we're in Vienna, they have a lot of Herr Professor Doctor. It's very respectable here to be Herr Professor Doctor. I don't know if you know that. And actually, when I book in a restaurant, I always get a table because I say Herr, I say I'm Professor Doctor Doctor. You can list every doctor that you have, all right? Say Professor Dr. Taleb would like a table by the window, so on, and sure enough, you get a table by the window. If I call, this is, Mr. No table, all right? So we get two teams. One team with professors, doctor, so on here, trying to make the best, the absolute best schnitzel using chemistry equations, all right? And the other team of people trying to tinker. You take an existing schnitzel recipe, you taste, and then start adding randomly. If it's better, you keep. If it's worse, okay, you give to the tourists. So I mean, it's not like that's, so you don't have any downside from it, or little downside, you see? So that's tinkering. So most of what we know in a Western world comes from tinkering, even though we may have a theory for it. The steam engine was invented by the Greeks, went nowhere. It was rediscovered by ignorant people, ignorant, I mean, in the academic sense, who were tinkering. You see? And actually, you can figure out here what I call rather be antifragile than smart, that it's much better to tinker and not know anything. All you know, if this is better, A is better than B, to keep. It's called ratcheting up. Then have a huge IQ. Anytime you outperform the IQ with tinkering. You need 1,000 IQ points to match someone who's an aggressive thinker. Okay? So, but rational in the sense that I discovered that schnitzel is better than what we had before, so I retain it. I don't, I have that intelligence at least. So now, principle, never miss an opportunity. Never. Never, 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 never. They don't come, especially if you have optionality, especially if it costs you very little to take it, to experiment with it. Comes the idea of business plan. It's a prison. So, a business plan should not be a prison. Or have a business plan, or if you want, but try to have exit things from it. The other thing is optionality depends much more on the contract that you have than industry. Like real estate, for example. Investors have a lot more optionality, namely Donald Trump. The upside you keep, the losses you give chemical bank, all right? Actually bankrupted Manny manufacturers Hanover. The banks, they have no upside. They take all the risk, for 100 basis points. So, and of course, entrepreneurial success is not the result of funding. Usually funding is top down. Funding comes later, when people are already successful. Nor is it, when you look at the name of these companies, the result of education, formal education, but the education you get from talking to one another, while eating the quiche that we had last night and happy hour. That form of education works a lot better than sitting down in a classroom with a professor. But now talking about Newtonics, so I had a question, I wanted to pick his brain to figure out what did Newtonics do, why did he invite me? People usually invite me, typically, when they like antifragility. So I tried to pick their brain because I say it's never random why I'm here. So he gave me a lot of reasons, which we'll see, but he didn't realize one central reason, that the best technology is the technology that doesn't look like technology, where they hide something Steve Jobs understood, or Google, where you don't have the clutter or the cognitive load or the distraction of having a lot of side avenues, where they do all the things to simplify, which cost a lot. So that's what I think is their secret, okay? On that aspect in a few minutes, good technology is something that destroys bad previous technology, all right? Not something that brings something new, but something that makes the old technology disappear as a technology in the background. We'll see that. But I picked up things from him, notes I'm taking home with me. The first one is that Nutanix had a problem with a partner turned foe, that kind of love-hate relationship. Maybe it'll be a partner soon again, you never know, all right? So where Nutanix created its own hypervisor open system, AHV, built heuristically. And guess what? Not from first principles. So either they were lucky, but you're never lucky. It's your positive exposure to luck by tinkering frantically till you find something, heuristically, not top-down. The second attribute, it is feeding off random and cron computing. And the third one is they benefited immensely from what's the name of the bank, Dell? Sorry? Yes, who were a demanding customer. And the best thing you would hope in life is have a German-speaking customer, right? Who's very demanding. Or Japanese, these are even more details-oriented. So that sort of make you overcompensate because, and actually, if I lowered my voice to the point of being hardly audible, you would actually get more of my lecture by overcompensating on your side. So there was a mechanism of overcompensation, tinkering, all the reasons why I was invited, but this one he missed in his explanation, which is a central one. So let me explain now, close on that Linde Effect about technology. What is this from? How old is this kitchen? 2,000-year-old, okay? So let me give you the rule. I was asked by The Economist years ago, after the Black Swan, to predict the future. So they wrote to me and said, can you give me a list, actually they wrote to me saying, we have President Obama, Prime Minister Cameron, all these people writing about the future. Can you give me a list of what's wrong with their forecast? Because we can't really, you say you can't forecast the future. Sure enough, I didn't wait to get all their stuff. Within 20 minutes, I wrote them a letter very quickly saying, this is what's gonna happen. I said, what? Are you the author of Black Swan or some imposter, or were you lying before, you're not lying now, or vice versa? I said, no, it's very easy to predict. I said, how? I said, okay, you take the present as baseline, and 20 years from now, you remove anything that came last 20 years. Completely counterintuitive. So yeah, it's called the Linde Effect, after a restaurant in Broadway. And the way, a restaurant near Broadway, very bad cheesecake, by the way, don't go there, but it's called the Linde Law, where actors would discover the rule. You take a Broadway show, if it's under 1 year old, it won't make a year. At 2 years to go. So life expectancy of technology increases with time, okay? But the edge is, of course, technologies that are 1,000 years old, 2,000 years old. So it's a very, very counterintuitive law that what is new doesn't have much chance, again, because 99.9% of technologies fail, replaced by newer technologies. But the old is not replaced by newer technologies. It means it's resilient to that kind of thing. So you gotta learn from the old. So my letter said, okay, instead of predicting the future by taking the present as baseline and adding all these kind of fancy stuff to the present, I'll take the present as baseline, everything that's 20 years old or younger, remove it from the future. And effectively, the technique works. It is very predictive. And again, people told me, well, hey, you know what? At the time, people still use desktops. how many people use desktop now? The only reason you have a desktop is to train employees to make sure they're in the office, because the laptop does just the same. Even the laptop being replaced by tablets. And this rule is invariant to how we define technology. Tablet, aha. How old is a tablet? Depends how you look at it. It can be 4,000 years old as a tablet, but the modern tablet is a few years old, which means that the tablet as a concept will be there 4,000 years from now, right? Or at least 20 years from now. And the tablet as modern technologies is going to disappear, replaced by some other technology. The definition is invariant to the way you define the technology. If you say car, if it's box on wheel, 5,000 years. If it's red convertible, 52 years, or 6, whatever. You see the idea. So with this rule, you can tell yourself the following. Why is social media successful? Because it's a destructive technology that removed the old unnatural technology, the television. The television, you're sitting down on one-way relationship with no discussion. People are argumentative. Before that, what did they do? In Vienna, they went to cafes in the evening. They aggregate, they go to the agora. So social media allows people to communicate in a two-way relationship. This is why it's successful, you see, because it's destroying older technology, you see. So with this, we can forecast technologies based on the rule that if you want to be successful in technology, shoot for the old, okay, and make it look non-technological. And that's basically one of the reasons. Okay, so let me close and wrap up. Where's the sign that says stop? I like the stop sign, always stop on a stop sign. So let me wrap up in this thing in the 10 seconds that I have left. So the whole idea here is that in a world with a lot of uncertainty, there exists a very rational and structured way to accept ignorance and go about it by loving, if you're set up in the right way. The more uncertainty in the environment, the richer you're going to get. The more successful, the happiest you're going to get. But it requires a rigorous approach to tinkering, never miss an option, and make sure you always have in your business positive optionality. If you have that, you'll succeed for a long time. If you don't have it, sorry to say, but you're fragile and you won't make it. Thank you for listening to me.